Welcome to the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. Get ready to be inspired, uplifted, and connected to the miraculous energy of unconditional love that I call Mother Mary. If you're a highly sensitive, highly creative entrepreneur or light worker, and you want to magnify your impact and your intuition, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Reverend Frances Faden, interfaith minister, intuitive coach, and author of Meditation is Friendship with God. I can't wait to share miraculous stories, books, meditations, messages, and interviews with other miraculous light workers just like you. Are you ready to magnify your miracles? What are we waiting for? Let's get started. Hello, my miraculous friend, and welcome to another episode of the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. This is Reverend Frances Faden, and I'm so grateful that I get to spend this time with you today talking about one of my favorite subjects, books. Yay! But before we get into this month's awesome book, which has really been so impactful for me, I want us to take a few deep breaths together and just get ourselves grounded and centered. If you're driving, please keep your eyes open, but you can bring your awareness to your breath. And even if you're out walking and listening, just bring your mind and your awareness to your breathing and just let yourself come more deeply into this moment. Feeling the presence of spirit all around you, supporting you in that very air that you breathe. Knowing that you are completely loved and completely supported. And as you prepare yourself to receive this inspiration today, just let yourself imagine that you've already heard what you needed to hear. You've already received what you've needed. You feel so full and so grateful. And knowing that that's exactly what's going to be happening, let's take one more deep breath together in gratitude, and we can begin. Well, hello once again, my friend, and this is Reverend Frances Faden. If I sound a little funny today, I'm at the very, very tail end of a little bit of a cold, have a little bit of congestion going on, but I didn't want to miss this time together. I didn't want to miss this opportunity to connect with you with this new book. I'm doing a book review today called Sister Karol's Book of Spells, Blessings, and Folk Magic by Sister Karol Jackowski. Now, this book is amazing, and I've been loving it so much. I want to tell you a little bit about how I found out about it. I'm going to read a little bit from it, and then I'm so excited to let you know that in next week's episode, I'm going to have the pleasure of interviewing Sister Karol and ask her about this beautiful book. So I am recording this podcast episode in October of 2020. You might not be listening to it then, but that's when I'm recording it. And it's a perfect time to be talking about a book of spells, blessings, and folk magic, because this is the month of October, which is the month of the Rosary. And if you're not someone who is raised with the Rosary, Mother Mary says it's the month of spiritual practice, or what we would call in Sanskrit the word sadhana, whatever it is that you're practicing. So maybe you say rosaries, maybe you don't, maybe you do mantras, maybe you do meditation, whatever it is that you do. This is the month we really highlight that, in the month of October. And then, of course, we have the end of the month of October with the Halloween energy. We have Halloween and All Souls Day and All Saints Day. So this idea of spells really jumped out at me when I thought, how could a sister, a Catholic sister, be talking about spells and blessings and folk magic? Well, I'm glad you asked that question along with me. Shall we take a look and see what it is that she says? So in the preface of this book, Sister Karol says, you might be wondering how a nun got interested in spells and magic. You might also be surprised to learn that it happened quite naturally, fitting perfectly into everything that I learned and believed in growing up Catholic. I was born and raised believing in God, angels, saints, a spirit-filled world in which we had the ability to talk to them, ask for whatever we needed, and sense a divine presence with us wherever we were. At her grade school in East Chicago, she attended Mass every morning before class, where she watched a priest transform bread and wine in the mysterious language of Latin into the body and blood of Christ. Abracadabra. Catholic magic. I grew up thinking if bread and wine could be transformed into something divine, so could the rest of creation. The holiness in all creation can be found in those who have eyes to see what they believe. And then she goes on to tell her story of moving to New York and why she wrote this particular book. And then I'm going to move on a little bit from here. And this is a book about, now I'm on page 7. This is a book about prayer and how important ritual becomes at certain times in our lives. Those who've grown up in ancient religious traditions, Judaism, pre-Christian, Catholicism, Buddhism, Islam, know instinctively the powerful way ritual prayer blesses every moment of every day. At its very best, religion teaches us to revere everything as holy, just the way it is. Even those who are decidedly not religious in the traditional sense occasionally feel the need for divine intervention, blessing, and inspiration, especially in life's most profound turning points like birth, marriage, sickness, and death. They too believe in the power of prayer to help good things happen, bring comfort in times of sorrow, enlighten next steps when we feel lost and confused. As a matter of fact, the fastest growing religion of today is giving birth to a new kind of, quote, none, None, those living at the heart of what the Dalai Lama sees as a spiritual revolution, a shift in consciousness touching the heart of those who seek to save their own soul without religion. This book is written with everyone in mind, especially the, quote, nuns, Nones. On page 9, she goes on to say, long before religion became organized in churches and its powers centralized exclusively in men, practicing religion at home was the norm, most likely led by women. Every household had its deities, its altars, its daily rituals, with meals most sacred, sources of Holy Communion. All of life became part of ritual prayer. Ancient religious texts are full of household spells, blessings, and folk magic for the most ordinary things, such as healing a foot, silencing a barking dog, preventing a snake bite, having a good singing voice, and my personal favorite, making a man tongue-tied. At first, some concerns appeared trite and unworthy of divine attention until I read on to see how sacred ordinary life was to our earliest ancestors. All of life was holy, charged with the presence of God, and everything became sacred for those who knew how to see. These commonplace rituals became folk magic for the soul, all meant to strengthen our connection to the divine mysteries of everyday life. Everything came with a purpose. Everything became part of life's mystery. Those are the good old days. Connecting daily to what is holy in heaven, on earth, and in one another is an ancient soul-saving grace. So you can see already in this book, she's very much of an interfaith kind of a person. Even though she's got her roots in Catholicism, she has really explored many, many different traditions through the lens of prayer and specifically ritual prayer. Now, if you're like me, you might be saying like, all right, so what about this whole spell thing? What's going on with that? And then I love this explanation on page number 11. She says there's no official explanation of why the earliest pre-Christian prayers were known as spells, except for the primitive belief that's exactly what deities do when we call. They stop for a spell. Don't you just love that? It took all the scariness out of the idea of a spell. We call them a spell because we're inviting the divine to stop for a spell. And stay with us. The spell itself has everything to do with God's visit and what happens when divine intervention occurs. Those who pray in ordinary ways do so in times of crisis as well as with the simplest matters of everyday life. Because rituals come from the soul, They are naturally, supernaturally experienced as divine, full of grace, full of magically favored moments. Lives are changed by such mysterious activity. Even if we don't get what we want immediately, something happens, and what we want to happen gradually becomes real. That's the power in spells, and therein lies the magic. When deities stop by for a spell, something changes in us. We somehow feel better. We may not know what happened, but we feel noticeably different after prayer, lifted up and calmer, with what Buddhists call evenness of mind. In ways we don't understand completely, prayer blows a little wind beneath our wings and we feel better. Abracadabra. And then the last part that I want to read to you is on page 55. And so, just to let you know, the first part of this book, she's explaining prayers. She's explaining how to create sacred space in your home. She's talking about different rituals that you can do, like lighting candles and incense and all of that. And then in part 2, she's just got these beautiful prayers. A Blessed Mother Broken Heart blessing, which I love. A problem-solving spell, litany of Holy Spirits, a happy birthday spell, a morning prayer, St. Jude blessing for the impossible, a money magic spell, the Hail Mary, St. Joseph's real estate prayer. I mean, just such a plethora of beautiful prayers. And my hope for you is that you would get this book and read it and really make these your own, really make them your own. I'm going to share with you really quickly before I read this last part how this book has really blessed me. So, first of all, I came across it in a miraculous way, which, as you know, I want to do. And I belong to the Way of the Rose Facebook group. And somebody had posted this book and said, "Oh, I'm loving this book by Sister Karol." And I was like, "What is this book? Spells, blessings, folk magic, Sister Karol, what is this book?" And so I got the book. And I'm so grateful that I did because it speaks directly to my soul. And one of the things that I had been looking at, and you know, because you probably listened to my podcast episode on the Sabbath, creating sacred rest, is I was really looking at healing my relationship with time. And if you're like me, on the weekend, I could never decide. I would have this time. And it's like, do I go grocery shopping Saturday? Do I go Sunday? Do I take a day of rest on Sunday? Do I do it on Monday? What do I do? And every week I'd go through the same thing over and over again. And what I found is that because I never decided in advance, I always felt a little bit stressed around the weekend. Like, what's the best way to use my time? And so through my own journaling with my own higher self, and after reading this book, I was inspired by her Sabbath prayer, the Sabbath prayer, which is basically the Jewish prayer on Friday night. And you light a candle and you say this beautiful prayer. But what I got from it was the intention behind it is that you're deciding ahead of time that this is going to be my sacred time. And so as I was journaling, my own higher self, my inner priestess, started saying to me, you can't leave sacred time up to chance. You need to make a decision. And you need to decide in advance what day of the week is going to be your sacred day. And then pick out your sacred days during the month that you want to observe. Now, these could be feast days. This could just be maybe Monday is your sacred day. It doesn't really matter. But decide ahead of time is what my own guidance said. And that way you're not leaving it up to chance because you might wake up that day and maybe you change your mind or whatever. You're committing to it. And this made a really big difference for me, this idea of committing to ritual prayer. So now what I do is I have this beautiful, really thin beeswax candle that if you go to the Orthodox Church, the Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox Church, you'll see they have these really, really thin beeswax candles, and you put them in and you light them, and that you let it light for the whole prayer until it burns itself down. And so this is what I've been doing on Friday night. I've been lighting this beautiful candle in front of a beautiful icon of Our Lady of Perpetual Healing. And I'm specifically inviting in the energy of sacred rest, which for me, sacred rest is anything that rejuvenates you, anything that lifts you up, anything that feeds your soul. So it could be doing something spiritual, it could be going deeper in my spiritual practices, it could be practicing music or painting or anything that brings light and joy to my soul. And I got that inspiration from this book, just from the idea of having a weekly time that I'm, not on Facebook and I'm not on any devices and I'm really being present with my soul and I'm letting myself slow down. And prayer is the gateway that ushers in that very sacred time. So here we are on page 54. And she says at the bottom of page 54, understanding what happens when we pray is the ultimate mystery because it calls us to see the unseen. It changes the way we see. In prayer, we begin to look beyond appearances into the heart of the matter where life changes. Appearances are not reality. Beneath the surface of events that tend to toss us back and forth with miserable feelings lies the heart of the matter, bearing lessons to be learned, truths to be revealed, peace and comfort to be granted. Divine activity occurs in prayer, moving us in ways we may not see or feel instantly and certainly don't understand. Even so, transformation occurs. Something happens. Like scenery changes in the dark during acts in a play, we cannot sit for a spell with deities and walk away untouched, even though we may feel that way at first. We are asked not to grieve endlessly because what we have lost will return to us in another form. Hidden within the worst of times are the best of times to come. So, anyway, beautiful, beautiful book. And then she just goes in here talking about things that you can do. I just think this is a handbook for highly sensitive people on the spiritual path because it's not about religion. It's really about your daily practices. And I love this, how to make magic. She talks about things you can do, make the day holy, working with candles. So beautiful. All right, I'm going to see if I can pick one of these blessings for you to close out our. Here's a beautiful one to close out our podcast today. So, once again, reading Sister Karol's Book of Spells, Blessings, and Folk Magic. So, here is page 148, and this is the Holy Mother Prayer, which is appropriate. Holy Mother, this prayer is inspired by an ancient divinely charged goddess prayer frequently used in spells and blessings. That's the introduction. So I'm going to read this to you. Pray this with me if you will. O Holy Mother, to you I pray. Come and grant my prayer this day. All in true accord with thee. As I pray, so might it be. And then make your request. And we end with, blessed be. Isn't that beautiful? I could spend so much time with this book with you guys because I love it so, so much. But I'm going to save some for next week when we're actually going to be talking with Sister Karol and finding out a little bit more about how she put this book together. And I'm going to ask her some questions about magic and prayer and deepening our prayer practice and how we can really work. My big passion is working with the seasons. How can we work more with nature and consciously work with nature in a prayerful way to really have a deeper impact on our feeling of divine presence in our lives? So tune in for that next week when we're going to be talking with Sister Karol. In the meantime, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in. God bless each and every one of you. And remember that the key to magnifying your miracles is to always remember that your miracle is already here. Thanks so much, my friend. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. I'm so grateful to be able to spend this time with you. If you want even more inspiration, feel free to visit my website, francisfaden.com or magnifyyourmiracles.com. And if you did enjoy this episode, I would really appreciate it if you left a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever it is that you connect with awesome podcasts. Remember, the key to magnifying your miracles is remembering that your miracle is already here.